out of the ordinary insights. Brought to you by Investec Specialist Bank.
I'm speaking to Brian Molefe, the CEO of Transnet. You're watching Captains of Industry here on CNBC Africa. Let's look at the increase in tariffs that you're tabling at the moment, and largely that is going to impact the mining sector, dry bulk, where the tariffs are set to go up some 68-69%. However, in the manufactured environment, we're going to see transportation tariffs there coming down around about 47%. Have I got my numbers right this time around?
Correct, indeed. The tariff increases, this is a national port, the ports tariffs from the Transnet TNPA, the Transnet National Ports Authority. So the increase, the money that is coming to Transnet is about 5.4% that we are proposing. And the 5.4% is the increase of the cake. So the amount of the revenue that Transnet will collect. So it is about inflation, 5.4%. And that is how much is coming to Transnet. But inside the slicing of the cake, so we have had the tariffs are collected from the bulk industry as well as from the container industry. But we're now going to slice the cake differently. So what we're going to do is that we're going to increase the tariffs for bulk, which is for unprocessed minerals, and
which you refer to as dry bulk.
And dry bulk, yes, bulk and dry bulk and liquid bulk, and then decrease the tariffs on manufactured goods, which are largely in containers, and that is to promote the beneficiation of goods. And the reason is that why South Africa wants to do that, to encourage manufacturing, is that every day as Transnet, we run a 4-kilometer long train, 7 of them every day, to Sishen, full of iron ore.
But we still import steel.
And we import steel.
Doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense. So the idea is that the minerals, the God-given minerals that we have, we should process them with our hands before we export them. And so rather than buy fridges and stoves from other countries, we should use our steel that is in the ground, iron ore in the ground, to make things and then export them. And so that is to encourage that kind of behavior.
I think
so it's
many people support the beneficiation strategy. Yes, it is where we have to go as an economy.
Yeah. And really the thing that really made us do this is that in South Africa, bulk was subsidized. We have the cheapest port tariffs in the world for bulk and the most expensive port tariffs for containers. And when people say South African ports are the most expensive in the world, they are in fact referring to containers at Durban Container Terminal, at Durban Port. And so it is true that the charges for containers going through the port in Durban are amongst the highest in the world. And it shouldn't be, because that is manufactured products.
Now, you have never been scared of being unpopular, but you know you're going to get pushback from the miners right now who are under severe pressure.
Yes. Fortunately, the process is such that we make our own tariff application to the regulator, and then the public and the stakeholders that are affected by it will come and make their presentations.
Has there already been an outcry?
No, the public process is proceeding, so we expect they will make representations to the port regulator. And then we'll debate it there.
When I say you've never been afraid of being unpopular, I go back to your shareholder activism at the PIC and back to the days of, for instance, Trevor Monday being appointed at Barlow World. You stood by your mettle then, didn't you?
I was much younger and immature.
You're not taking on any more shareholder activism fights.
No, we have to make sure the trains run on time this time. Yeah, we're now involved in the real economy, and the real economy is much more demanding.
In terms of your capex, you've just put forward an agreement with a Chinese company for the supply of trains. You're going to get about 90 trains. Can you talk me through that deal and why you've gone with the Chinese supplier?
Well, there was a tender. Everybody tendered. The Germans, the Canadians, the Americans tendered. And
the Chinese came out tops?
They came out tops on price and when they can deliver. One of the things was that the Chinese can deliver about 14 months before anybody can give us the first train. And so that's what they put in the tender document. That's what we wrote in the agreement with them, and they will be punished severely if they can't deliver on those timelines. And it's just one aspect that made them win the tender. Very competitive price and so on. We went, sent a team of engineers there. I also visited the facilities myself. They are not shabby at all. They are well run manufacturing facilities. They have manufactured trains that are much bigger and with much more specifications than what we require for our purposes. So we're quite confident that they'll be able to deliver.
While we're talking about tenders, and of course these are big and lumpy and they are of an international nature, but how do you prevent the tenderpreneurs that we often talk about within the Transnet fold in terms of suppliers? Have you got your eye on that kind of level of detail?
Oh, the tenderpreneurs are, I suppose, necessary in a capitalist system for price tension, for more people playing in the game and so on. And so people will get involved in consortiums, get involved with particular groups. We're not going to say this one is a tenderpreneur, this one is not, and this one is more legitimate, this one's less legitimate. We're going to focus on the technical merits and the financial merits of the bids that we get. So
do you have strict controls in place to make sure that there's no corruption in the system?
Yes, we do indeed. We have the hotlines that people can phone if they have information. We have a robust system of receiving the tenders, opening them, how they are evaluated. We have independent auditors present at all times when the tenders are being evaluated. Everything is recorded, both on paper and tapes of the bid evaluation committee meetings. We have certain approval levels between the operating divisions, the group executive, the board committees, as well as the board itself. So tenders that are very big normally have to be approved by the board.
Brian, one of the underlying problems in the country at the moment are obviously the ongoing wildcat strikes in many industries.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on this labour unrest and what it means for us as a country, specifically when you're looking at international investor interest in the likes of a Transnet? It obviously dampens the outlook considerably.
For an employer, wildcat strikes are very frustrating because there are known processes. There are agreed to processes of going to strike. It's not like South Africa's labor laws prohibit people from going on strike. It's just that it has to be in an orderly fashion, and when people choose to go on a wildcat strike, it is very, very frustrating. But on the other hand, perhaps people are driven into going into these wildcat strikes, and perhaps management should do introspection about what it is that we're doing wrong.
And what is it that we're doing wrong?
Well, sometimes it's just not looking at the interests of workers in totality. People think that when we have reached the wage agreement, that's the end of it. There is a sort of a total offering, you know, the living conditions. We have to be concerned about the living conditions.
But can we continue to afford above inflation wage increases? That's at the heart of this. Are we not going to damage ourselves as an economy? Already, if you look, and I go back to those discussions we had in Davos,
yes.
Already when it comes to the World Competitiveness Report, as per the World Economic Forum,
yes.
we rank at the bottom at 144 out of 144 economies surveyed when it comes to labor rigidity. That means the hiring and firing
yes.
of labor.
Yes.
So it is detrimental to the investor environment externally.
No, I agree. It is a very unfortunate consequence of our past, that for a long time South Africa had the highest Gini coefficient in the world, our labor regime was just labor existed to be exploited, and people were never what people earned for a century or more did not reflect the profits that the companies were making. And unfortunately now the mindset of the labor unions, the mindset of the workers is that they have to get out of their situation of poverty. They have to catch up.
What
There's
is
a
that
lot of
pressure?
catch-up.
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed. I think we're on the same page, and certainly equality is the way forward for any economy. We know
Yes,
that
yes.
that you
But-
cannot maintain a status quo if you
Yeah.
have got huge levels of inequality.
But
But
all-
can the economy afford the pressure?
But all I'm saying is we have to understand these pressures. I'm not saying that we can afford them. I'm saying that you have to understand where they come from.
But how do we
And
navigate? What are
have
the solutions?
we have to show some levels of understanding and empathy. Perhaps the solution does not lie in increasing wages above inflation, but then we have to have the discussion about what it is that we do to alleviate poverty in South Africa. A lot of corporates are very happy to say that the wage increases are unsustainable, and yet they are not transforming. They're not transforming at management level. The companies in the JSE still are not very representative of the demographics of the country.
What is your outlook for South Africa going forward? We've obviously just been through the tabling of the budget. We're looking at debt to GDP increasing. We're looking at a muted consumer at best, potentially an unsecured credit bubble that may burst down the line. Are you feeling unsettled about the economic environment, or do you think that we will navigate our way through the somewhat choppy water?
I think we will. And I'll tell you why. Because my outlook for South Africa is not usually 6 months or 9 months or 12 months or 3 years or 5 years. It's 20 years. And so when I think about where South Africa was 20 years ago, it's a very different place to what it is today, despite all the negativity that has always been there in the last 20 years. What the future holds for us in the next 20 years, I think with the direction that we have taken, the human rights culture, the management of the economy, in 20 years' time, we will be in a very different place.
And what does the next 20 years hold for you? You are not yet 50. I'm not going to ask you about your legacy, because I think you've probably got a long time left within, whether it's the public sector or you decide to go private sector
I'm
down
most
the line.
likely to be 5 years in retirement after 20 years.
I believe you want to be an ambassador on an island. An ambassador on an island.
Or a teacher at a small seaside university somewhere.
So you're after less stress at the end of the day, Brian.
Yes, yes.
I've been chatting to Brian Molefe, the CEO of Transnet. You're watching Captains of Industry here on CNBC Africa.